On Tech News Today, Samsung is providing an alternative to Google Maps on some of its phones. Plus, Google reveals a secret drone program to take on Amazon. MSN Messenger is shutting down for good, and so is Google authorship. All that and much more coming up right now on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, August 29th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by Gazelle, the fast and simple way to sell your used gadgets. Find out what your used iPhone, iPad, and other Apple products are worth at Gazelle.com. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. Welcome to the show. I'm Mike Elgan. With me is Jason Howell.
Here I am.
Who is palpably excited because coming up next week is a big pile of Android devices. It's really going to be literally the biggest week of the year for Android phones next week, Jason.
Let's see, what do we have? We have IFA, I know that, IFA in Berlin.
Well, IFA doesn't even start until Friday, but in the scramble to sort of preempt each other, you have, well, first of all, it starts Monday. The first Android One phone hits in India on Monday. That's going to be a Micromax device. Samsung has a big product launch on Wednesday the 3rd. In Berlin, Beijing, and New York simultaneously. That's going to be a big Galaxy Note 4 phablet and probably some other goodies. Sony has an event. Asus has an event. Motorola has a big event where they're rolling out the successor to the Moto X and also officially releasing the Moto 360. HTC has as an event. Huawei, and of course, as we reported yesterday, Dyson has a new vacuum cleaner. I don't think
to
that's
top it off.
Device. Yeah, that's right.
To clean up.
To
clean up after the rest.
After you open all those boxes, all the styrofoam peanuts.
Yeah,
that's what that's for.
So you're saying we're going to be a little busy next week. That's what you're telling me right now, especially because we're off on Monday, right?
Exactly. I'm saying you are going to be really busy.
Well,
these are Android devices.
I have a lot to look forward to then.
And we also have with us today our guest co-anchor, Harry McCracken. Welcome to you, Harry McCracken.
Hey, Mike. It's great to be here.
Now, you are using a Surface Pro 3, and you've been using it for some time now. What do you think about it?
Well, I wrote about it over at Fast Company, and my overall take is I think the hardware is about as good as you can get when you are trying to be a tablet, a laptop, and also a desktop PC, because you can get a docking station for it. I think Windows still has a fair amount of ways to go yet before it kind of catches up with the hardware, though. I mean, it's still a disjointed experience. It still works in ways you don't expect. There still are surprisingly few desktop apps that seem to understand they're working on a tablet.
Would this be
the thing I loved most?
Go ahead.
The single thing I loved most is drawing with a pen. In terms of doing artwork on a computer, this is the best portable device I've ever used.
Interesting. Now, would you recommend this to somebody who's a non-advanced user who has simple needs like email and web surfing and things like that?
Well, Microsoft's advertising for this, I think, hasn't helped. When the first Surface devices came out, they promoted it as being better than the iPad, and the new ads promoted it as being better than the MacBook Air. I don't think it's really like those devices. This is for people who want to convert between multi-modes and are willing to invest some time in learning it. One of the best things about the Surface Pro 3 is you can get it equipped in a really powerful way. You can get a Core i7, you can get 512 gigabytes of storage, you can get 8 gigabytes of RAM. So I don't look at it as a machine for casual use so much as something for people who want a pretty hardcore PC, but one that can be used in a bunch of different ways.
It's kind of like the original Bill Gates vision where he always imagined people bringing pen-based tablets into meetings. This is the Windows for pens and Windows tablet PC vision, but now it's sort of updated into the multi-touch world. So in that sense, it's successful. Finally, they're getting to something that I think a lot of business people especially can bring into meetings and draw and sketch and take notes with a pen and also get all their Windows-based data and documents. So it sounds like a pretty cool device, at least from Microsoft's perspective. We'll see if the market responds as they want them to.
Windows 9, which we should know about before too long, might help because it looks like they are giving more TLC to the desktop mode, which got almost no attention in Windows 8 or Windows 8.1, and that could help a lot.
Well, let's jump into the news, shall we, Harry McCracken? Samsung is planning to install Nokia's mapping app on Samsung Galaxy devices and the Gear smartwatch. The app is called Here, and it competes directly with Google Maps and Google Waze. Here used to be available only for iOS and Windows Phone devices, but the announcement involves a new Android version as well as a Tizen version of Here. Nokia told TechCrunch that they plan to bring Here to other devices as well. Lisa Eadicicco is a tech reporter for Business Insider and joins us now.
Thanks for having me.
All right. Can you tell us a bit about Nokia's Here product?
Sure. So basically, I mean, you can kind of think of it as the Google Maps for Windows Phone. Until this point, it's only been on Windows Phone and Windows 8.1. And really, it does a lot of the same things that Google Maps does. It can give you turn-by-turn directions. It can, give you information about traffic patterns. So you can really think of this as the Windows Phone equivalent to Google Maps.
Now, is Samsung dropping Google Maps, or are they going to offer both on the phones?
They'll definitely offer both. I mean, it still runs on Android, so Google Maps isn't going away. It's still a Google operating system. So you'll definitely still have Google Maps. I think the big thing here is that having Here on Samsung devices only. So this isn't really Here coming to Android. It's Here coming to Samsung. So I think that's a big thing for them, is that they kind of have this sort of, they have this deal with Nokia now where it kind of feels like it's both a Samsung and Nokia branded navigation app.
Harry McCracken, are you familiar with the Here application? And also, do you think that Samsung is doing this as part of their larger program of sort of kind of getting away from the Google orbit?
Well, Here is really interesting. Now that Nokia sold off its phones to Microsoft, it's kind of the last consumer-facing thing that Nokia has. And it's also one of very, very few serious mapping systems in the world. There's almost nothing harder to do than maps, as we know from Apple's difficulties doing that. So it's really good. And if you were somebody like Samsung, who was trying to be a little bit independent and not entirely dependent on Google for apps, there are very few places you can go, and Nokia is one of the places that has the stuff you need.
Harry, one quick follow-up to that. I mean, this seems like the hardest thing you could possibly do for the smallest reward. Why are they doing this, and how are they monetizing this, do you think?
Nokia?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge is making money off it. Google knows an awful lot about monetizing searches, so they can do it. I don't know a whole lot about what Nokia has done specifically to monetize Here, but the data is very valuable, and if they can put together partnerships with companies like Samsung, they can potentially get a lot of devices. I mean, the challenge is if Google's maps are also on that Samsung device, Here has to be compelling for you to choose to use Here rather than Google Maps. We all know that Google Maps is really well done. If Samsung ever took away Google Maps, it would be a different thing, but they can't do that without a radical change in their relationship with Google.
Yeah, which, they already have Tizen out there, so who knows, they could possibly do that in the future, and this could be a first step in that direction. We don't know that, but that is a possibility. Now, Lisa, where else do you think Here will be integrated in the future?
Well, Samsung already announced today in that announcement that it's going to work in car mode. So I think they are definitely exploring different types of devices that would make sense for a navigation app. Definitely on the smartwatch. I mean, they mentioned that in the announcement today that it's going to work with the new Gear S. And, the big feature that they're really promoting there is that you can even send your offline apps that you've saved over to the watch, even though the watch doesn't run on Android. So I think it'll basically show up on devices where it makes sense to be looking at navigation. So like in the car, on your wrist, things like that for sure.
All right. Well, Lisa Eadicicco is a tech reporter for Business Insider. That is, of course, businessinsider.com. And you can follow her on Twitter at Lisa Eadicicco. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. In just a second, we're going to tell you about a competition for Amazon's delivery drone. But first, I want to tell you about Gazelle. Gazelle wants to buy your used gadgets. There's lots of phones coming out, as we mentioned a few minutes ago. And every time new phones come out, the old phones get less valuable. You've got old devices lying around. They're gathering dust. The batteries are sort of dying because you're not charging them all the time. the best thing you could possibly do with those old devices. Don't recycle it, because recycling is a wasteful process. With Gazelle, they will put it back into circulation, refurbish it, and put it in the hands of somebody who will love it the way you did. Just go to gazelle.com. That's GAZELLE.com. Find your item, indicate the condition, and they'll give you a price. That price is locked in for 30 days. So as the value of these devices goes down, you will retain the value that represents the day you went to the website. And then you get paid by check, PayPal, or you can get an extra 5% if you use the Amazon gift card option. That's the option that I always use. And again, it's risk-free. And if you have data on your phone, and you should always erase the data before you do anything, get rid of your phone in any way. But if you don't do a good job, or if you don't know exactly how to completely wipe your data, Gazelle will do it for you, because they do know how. And so they'll, just go to the site, go through the process. They will send you a box. You put your device in the box and ship it back. They'll pay for all the shipping. They'll pay for the box. They'll pay for everything. No hassles at all. And then they will pay you. So find out what your iPhone's worth. Take a minute and go to gazelle.com to find out. We told you months ago about Amazon's delivery drone project, and now we're learning that Google's got a drone of its own. The company's been testing a system for drone delivery in secret for about 3 years. Jack Stewart covers science and technology for the BBC and joins us by phone now. Welcome, Jack Stewart.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. Now, Google's physical drones are actually really interesting little aircraft. Can you tell us about them?
Yeah, they're a fascinating design. Google has put as much effort into the hardware as the software, seemingly. They sit vertically. They're called tail sitters, which is a very descriptive name, with 4 propellers pointed upwards. So they look like the sort of quadcopter in a way that you can buy, and they'll use that sort of method of flight. But then they can flip horizontally, and then they become this blended wing. The entire body is a wing, so that they can fly long distances with some of the advantages that a plane has over a copter, then flip back up vertically, hover, and deliver their packages. So it's a very interesting design I haven't seen anywhere else.
Yeah, they're like Harrier jets, or like maybe Osprey airplanes used by militaries all over the world. Now, Harry McCracken, this is, to me, kind of a crazy idea. We're looking at a video right now where it's dropping a package from like 200 feet high or something. Harry McCracken, do you think this is really a viable way to deliver things by drones flying all over the place?
Well, Google says that it hasn't figured out everything, but it doesn't see any meaningful obstacles in the way of this eventually being something that is ready for consumers. One of the biggest challenges with this and with Amazon's drones is the legal aspect. The laws are not set up for these things to exist.
Yep.
And so I think in a way, it's good news that Google is doing this too, just because, laws won't have to be rewritten just for Amazon. If Google is serious about this too, that means that other folks are working on it too. And one way or another, we'll figure out what this means in terms of safety and in terms of law.
Yeah, the law is quite an interesting problem. Now, Jack Stewart, do you think that the current laws in the United States are sort of hampering innovation in the area of drones? There are so many companies like Google and Amazon and others that are trying to innovate, even Disney, they're trying to innovate with drones, and here they are illegal to use. And this is probably one of the reasons why Google had to test this thing on Australia, on a farm in Australia where it's legal to fly a drone around. Do you think that the government is hampering innovation?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly the reason they did the tests in Australia, because there are more, I think the word the company used, permissive regulations surrounding drones. I guess there's a lot of open space in Australia as well. So they actually did their tests from one remote farm to another one. As in terms of testing in the US, what they said to me was that they do want to open this conversation now about regulations and about some of the other concerns people might have about safety, about privacy, about noise, and that this is sort of the beginning of that phase. They sort of compared it to working in a sandbox. They're doing these tests and these experiments now in a sandbox. They're isolated from the rest of the world, but they want to expand the boundaries of that sandbox as they go on, so that they continue to have more space to experiment and actually develop these technologies.
The thing that concerns me is that, of course, you see it very clearly, the fantasy land aspect of this, when you saw Amazon's promotional video back when they were sort of hawking this last year, which is that in the Amazon promotional video, you see the drone in a factory, picks up a box from the assembly line, flies out this open sort of hangar door across an open field, and then lands in somebody's front porch. And, you know, how many people live across an open field from Amazon's factory? You know what I'm saying? In reality, there are power lines, there are trees, there are all kinds of obstacles. There are birds. There are, you know, all kinds of different
There are other
problems.
drones that could be full of these things.
Exactly. I mean, I can't wait until the Amazon drone crashes into the Google drone and the packages go flying everywhere. So you know, do you have any sense or any information from the companies that are working on delivery drones, whether they're discovering that there are solutions to the problems of things like power lines?
Yeah, Google didn't sound intimidated by this. So, you know, this is a project that come out of Google X, their sort of semi-secretive research arm that is also responsible for the self-driving car. And a lot of the challenges are the same, although the two projects don't have a lot of crossover yet. But you think the expertise Google has in developing very detailed maps, for example, and how much of the Earth's surface they currently have mapped, they can combine that. They can combine some of their autonomous technologies that give these drones enough intelligence to avoid each other, to avoid power lines, to choose routes that are, say, not over school playgrounds, just in case something does go wrong. This thing needs to be able to decide where it needs to go to be safer so it could always land. And the initial uses that they're proposing are for humanitarian-type reasons, where these things could deliver aid to places where conventional vehicles can't get. So then you can imagine them being used over, I don't know, say a flooded area or an earthquake zone where there are fewer other hazards and a lot more to be gained.
And the subtext of all of this, of course, is the degree to which a company that started out as an online bookstore and another company that started out as an online search engine are increasingly looking exactly like each other with drone programs, with tablets, with they each have their own browsers. They both have downloadable content and so on. So it's really interesting to see the competition shape up. It looks like a big war between Amazon and Google as the sort of clash of the titans in technology over the next few years. Very interesting story. Jack Stewart writes at bbc.co.uk, and you can follow him on Twitter at Stewart_Jack. Thank you so much for joining us, Jack Stewart.
Thank you.
Microsoft's MSN Messenger is shutting down, and in other news, MSN Messenger still exists. While most former users thought MSN Messenger was shut down in March of 2013, it's been actively used in China all this time. Now Microsoft is encouraging users in China to migrate to Skype, which Microsoft, of course, owns, and each user in China will get $2 worth of Skype credit. Are you sad to see MSN Messenger go down the toilet, Harry McCracken? Is this a sad day, or is this a good thing and good riddance to it?
Well, like you say, the most fascinating thing about it is that it's the first time anybody has thought about MSN Messenger in a while or been reminded it does exist. And there are an awful lot of things out there that hang around. It's very rare for anything on the web to entirely disappear. And when they do, they tend to do so a lot more slowly than you expect. And it makes perfect sense. I mean, Microsoft wants you to use Skype. That's a dominant service in that space.
It's kind of a tragedy, too, because nowadays messaging applications are the hottest thing there is, even hotter these days than social networks. And Microsoft had one early that could have evolved it and developed it and cultivated it into a dominant service, theoretically. I assume they could have done that. I don't see why they couldn't have. They introduced it into mainland China in 2005. That's 9 years ago. And then it was for a while taken over completely by malware, according to users, and then it was superseded by far more popular services later on, but like QQ and WeChat in China. And now they're killing it in favor of Skype, and I don't see Skype being able to compete against the WeChats of the world. So, I think this is an opportunity lost for Microsoft, yet another opportunity lost for Microsoft, where they sort of own the future and just sort of let it go. That's my own analysis, it's just really interesting to see these dominant Chinese messaging applications taking over where Microsoft and others used to dominate. Well, Google is...
Yeah, I mean, like AOL Messenger, same thing with AOL Messenger and ICQ, and that entire original generation of messaging, none of them was able to come into the modern era.
It is incredible because they had such a head start, and then these upstarts came along and just sort of ate everybody's lunch. And nowadays, the only way to compete with them, as Facebook has discovered, is to buy them. And so really interesting there. Well, Google is ending its Google Authorship project, which used Google Plus as the identity service to verify the authorship of articles that appeared in Google search results. The system required a special tag on the site where articles were published and initially put the author's Google Plus profile picture in the results. Now, this system really affected people like you and me, Harry McCracken, who write lots of columns and sort of had a little, or felt like we had a kind of an advantage when this thing was in its heyday, because when you search for a certain topic that we had written about, our little profile picture from Google Plus would appear in the Google search results, making it appear like a more prominent result. Are you sad to see this one go?
Actually, I'm okay with that because it was kind of weird to see my own tiny little profile picture show up in the results. And as much as I'd like to think that everybody knows who I am and is searching out my content, I think generally speaking, that's not true on the web. And I can understand why real people didn't pay much attention to this. My mom loved it, I'm sure, but other than me and my mom, I don't think anybody wants to see me there.
Google said that it didn't bring any significant effect on the user's search experiment. They unveiled it in June of 2011. And, you know, they just said it didn't gain any traction. I personally could care less whether the author aspect of it was phased out or phased in or boosted or killed or whatever. What I was expecting, and I think what Google was expecting too, was that this is the beginning of Google Plus as an identity service. Back a few years ago, Google and Facebook both believed that they would have an identity service that would be almost like an online driver's license where anybody could identify themselves positively for all kinds of things like commerce and so on. And I assumed that authorship was just a small step in that direction. So let's start with the authors, and then we'll expand it to other types of professionals, and then we'll expand it to everybody where people can use Google Plus as their identity service. And they've clearly sort of given up on that, and so has Facebook to a certain extent. You know, recently Google stopped requiring real names. That was always kind of a farce and a very unpopular feature. So, so yeah, good riddance to it. I really don't think that people who happen to use the special, it always feels a little, you know, not quite right that, you know, if you use the special Google markup, then you get an advantage in Google search results over people who didn't use the markup. That didn't feel right to me either, even though I use it on all my columns, and my mom liked it as well. So, well, it's the end of an era. It's clearly part of the Vic Gundotra-ization of Google and Google Plus. They originally had everything pointing toward Google Plus, and now they're sort of loosening their tie a little bit and saying, you know what? These things are all separate now. We're not going to force all these integrations on Google+. Well, the popular NBC show The Blacklist will be streamed on Netflix starting next week, thanks to a deal that has Netflix paying, you ready for this, $2 million per episode for the rights. And this is according to an exclusive on Deadline Hollywood. The money is just getting insane here, Harry McCracken. Netflix paid $1.35 million for each episode of The Walking Dead. I thought that was a lot of money. Now they're paying $2 million for this, well, what is admittedly a very, very popular primetime TV show. Where does it end, Harry? I mean, is Netflix just going to keep shelling out big bucks for every popular TV show? What do you think?
Well, Netflix's biggest challenge is that it has an accurate reputation for mainly having older stuff and not having hot new stuff when it's still hot and new. So it makes a lot of sense for them to do deals like this. I think they need at least some current hits in order to fill out what they have, and they can't produce, you know, House of Cards type shows in great quantities because that's even more expensive than acquiring shows from other networks.
Yeah, absolutely it is. And but I wonder, I mean, it's kind of a weird move because presumably most people in the United States who have Netflix can watch it on TV. They can, you know, they can TiVo it and stuff like that because it's a primetime show. It's not like it's a, you know, it's not like The Walking Dead, which requires, what is it, AMC or whatever The Walking Dead is broadcast on. This is a primetime show. It's available to everybody. It's even available on terrestrial TV. If that's still available. So that part of it surprised me that they would pay so much to something that's free to just about everybody in the United States.
Well, I still think they would like you to watch that show on Netflix rather than watching it on your DVR or watching it while it's live.
Yeah, it's certainly easier to watch on a non-TV device, on a laptop or a tablet or something like that from Netflix than it is to get it from NBC through whatever apps they have and so on. Well, we have a few follow-ups for you. We told you this week about a Recode report that said Apple would announce its long-awaited smartwatch, the supposed iWatch, on September 9th. That news still stands, but now Recode is saying the watch itself won't ship until next year. So your Christmas plans are dashed, all of you. It's not going to happen. Forget about it. Stick with that Moto 360 for now. Also, in another follow-up, we told you about the likelihood that the iPhone 6 smartphone, which is also expected to be announced on the 9th, will have NFC support. The details and the evidence for that just keep piling up. Today, the Financial Times reports that Apple is working with Dutch chipmaker NXP Semiconductors for those NFC chips. And we've also been covering, and Jason has been fondling, the OnePlus One smartphone. The phone's been invitation only since the beginning, and now OnePlus is reporting an October release for the phone. Originally, it was September. Now it's October. What do you think, Jason? Is the air going to be out of this one by the time this thing hits the market, or is the excitement still going to be there?
I think the excitement's still there. I mean, if they were announcing that it was lifting right now, obviously that would make a kind of a bigger deal than waiting a couple of months. But we also don't know what phones we're going to be introduced to before then. Either. So based on the competitive landscape of now, it's nearly a slam dunk. Waiting a couple of months, you just never know. So I guess time will tell if it really ends up being a disadvantage for them, but it's still a great phone. So.
That's especially true given the number of announcements that are going to happen between now and then. In fact, over the next 2 weeks, everything's going to come out, and some really super innovative phones, presumably. Harry McCracken, I'm curious what your view is of the OnePlus One. Are you excited about this phone? Do you think it's really innovative, or is this just a cheap Android phone?
You know, the price is definitely part of the appeal, but it is a nice piece of hardware. They haven't messed too much with Android. My favorite Android phones are usually the ones where the company that made the fewest changes to what Google did, and OnePlus One does not have a lot of changes, and that's part of the appeal to me.
And how about the denim back option? You excited about denim back and leather and all these other things that we've heard about?
It is just the fact that a small company is doing Android at all is intriguing, and if they can do hardware that's at least as appealing as stuff from the big companies, if not more so, that's fascinating. I'll be interested to see if they can scale up and meet the demand once it's fully open to everybody.
Well, those of you who are expecting to get an Apple iWatch for Christmas, those hopes are gone. But now I have an alternative gift for you to ask Santa Claus for. Dell's Alienware is resurrecting its gaming desktop line with a new product that uses the old Area 51 sub-brand. The system is built around Intel's new Haswell E CPU and supports up to 3 full-size graphic processors and 5 hard drives. So it's a super powerful system. What sets it apart is its weird 3-sided case design, which Alienware calls a triad. It's designed to be rocked from one side to the other to gain access to ports or doors, and it also is extremely heavy. The desktop, this is not including the monitor, weighs about 45 pounds. So it's not exactly a portable device. Harry McCracken, are you gonna get one of these?
I'm not, but I have to give some kudos to Dell. They bought Alienware a really long time ago. I want to say it was like 10 years ago, and I kind of assumed that the brand would go away and Dell would mess it up. But they seem to have done a good job of letting Alienware be Alienware, and this is about as Alienware a machine as you can imagine.
It's extremely alien, and you know, I agree with you completely. Whenever companies make acquisitions, they almost always say, or they very often say, "Oh, we're going to let it run independently as it was before." And they say that because that's a cheap way. And I've said this on the show before. That's a cheap way for them to land the deal, to sort of reassure the founders and so on. But eventually, they own it. They can do whatever they want. So it's refreshing to see Dell, you know, keeping their commitment and keeping it as an independent brand, and it feels like a different company, even though it's really owned by Dell. So that is, I agree with you, that is very refreshing. Well, our TNT fan of the day is D. Scott Angle in Nottingham, England, who posted this picture in the This Is Twit community on Google+. He watches the show while taking a shower. I've always said, Jason, that this show is good, clean fun, but this isn't what I meant.
I also really appreciate the technique of, flapping the tablet case over a clothes hanger.
That's right.
Something I have seen before, but you know, that's just because it works.
Not in the shower. Yeah,
not in the shower. Right.
This is awesome. So you know, and when we have a long show, of course, he has a long shower, and when we keep it short, he's right out of the shower as soon as the show is done. So there you go. How do you watch or listen to TNT? Do you do it in the shower? Where do you do it? Just take a picture of your setup and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowDoYouWatchTNT, and we will find it. And, of course, you can search the hashtag HowDoYouWatchTNT, and you can see them all for yourself right now. And that is the tech news today. Harry McCracken, thank you so much for joining us as our guest co-anchor today.
Thanks, guys. It's always fun.
Always fun. And you can find Harry at his new location, which is Fast Company, where he is the technology editor, and also at the Technologizer blog, as always. And we thank you again, Harry McCracken. Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today on Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Feedly, Yahoo, RSS. So many options, and you can choose your favorite at twit.tv/TNT. Follow us on Twitter, Tech News Today TV, or join our Google Plus community. Just search Google Plus for Tech News Today, and you'll find all of our locations there. And please send us your thoughts and opinions. Send email to our email address, which is tnt@twit.tv, or you can call our phone number, which is 260-TNT-SHOW. You'll be able to leave a message. Also, don't miss our evening newscast, Tech News Tonight, at 4 p.m. Pacific tonight and every weeknight right here on the Twit Network. My name is Mike Elgan. Monday is a holiday. Thank you for tuning in, so we will see you Tuesday.